Hi, everybody. This is Julie Wyatt. I'm presenting Chapter 9, Marketing Ethics, Advertising and Digital Marketing, covering sections 9.4 through 9.6, which is in our textbook, An Introduction to Business Ethics, 6th edition, by Joseph Desjardins. In the beginning of Chapter 9, we read about ethics in advertising and marketing and what are and are not ethical marketing practices. Today I'm going to talk about Section 9.4, Digital Marketing and Consumer Privacy, Section 9.5, Marketing Ethics and Consumer Autonomy, 9.6, Targeting the Vulnerable, Marketing and Sales. As you can see, there are many types of digital marketing, whether you are on websites, various apps, on your phone, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, shopping in the store, checking your email. The companies are collecting, analyzing, and using your personal information for the purposes of marketing or making a profit selling your information to third parties. When asking if marketing or advertising practices are ethical, we have to look at the relationship between the company collecting the data and the consumer. This is where both the company and the consumer voluntarily consent to do business together for mutual benefit. In an ethical business relationship, both have respect for each other's autonomy, which is making decisions in your own right, meaning without being influenced. Consumer privacy is the basis of the ethical relationship between company and consumer. The problem with determining if consumer privacy has been violated is differing views on consent. So we have 3 questions to help us. You may ask yourself, is collecting, using, storing, and selling your personal information ethical? You have to answer these 3 questions. The first is, what information can be known? Have you freely disclosed it, like on social media? If so, that's consent. Or if you told somebody, that's consent. Did the company use or collect your information for another purpose other than what it was intended or just unknown to you? If yes, that's not consent. How can that information be used? When a company sells your information to a third party, that is unethical because you have no relationship with them. The third question is, how can that information be obtained? You may have agreed to user agreements, but that wording is buried in the fine print, so that is unethical. A solution could be if companies would offer an opt-in instead of an opt-out, because that would give greater protection to consumers. And lastly, the fourth question is, for how long and under what security conditions can that information be retained? Companies have an ethical responsibility or duty to do their due diligence to prevent the occurrence, notify the consumer immediately, and provide the steps for the consumer to mitigate any harm. So because of these reasons, companies are liable for the harms the customer or consumer experienced, even if it wasn't their fault, the company's fault, if it wasn't. It's just like product liability. What does marketing do to consumers? Desjardins said on page 202, marketing can have direct and indirect influence on the very persons we become. Defenders of advertising say they are providing information to the consumers. And as far as the deceptive advertising practices, they say companies call into attention the deception by doing an ad of their own is the best way to combat it. It is said, that that those marketing practices, those unethical, what you see on TV and out advertisements wherever, that it shapes culture, it creates wants, and it also it changes how you perceive yourself and the things you want for yourself. Critics claim that marketing is a mirror of the culture of which it is a part. They also say consumers can choose to not buy the product. But John Kenneth Galbraith was an economist, and in his book, The Affluent Society, he wrote about one of his ideas called the dependence effect. His idea says that marketing creates the consumer demand, which means that supply and demand are reversed. He goes on to say that advertising convinces people that they need things that they don't really need. So on page 203, Desjardins says, by creating consumer wants with subliminal advertising, these practices are violating consumer autonomy because their wants have been manipulated. Autonomy involves making reasoned and voluntary choices. Consumer, they're not truly free if their wants were created by the marketing. Desjardins talks about the first order desires, which are wants that I have at any given time, like a car, a pool, a castle, to get drunk. And then there's second order desires, and it says, by asking yourself, why do I want it? Do I really want this? It gives you the time to reflect if you really want it, otherwise known as taking a step back. Gerald Dworkin, he came up with 2 conditions for autonomy. Authenticity, it's the desire. If the desire is not renounced or rejected by the person, then it is authentic. And then the second condition is based on capacity. Consumers have the capacity to critically reflect on their desire to accept it as their own. So if they don't have authenticity or capacity, then it's not ethical. So talking about vulnerable, targeting the vulnerable, we're talking about the marketing and sales groups. So according to Macmillan Dictionary, it is someone who is weak or easy to hurt, physically or mentally. So basically someone easily open to harm. Advertisers use these slogans, and that's how they take advantage of or manipulate those who are vulnerable. Advertisers want consumers to lose their autonomy and voluntary decision making by attracting them with their motivations like fear, loneliness, guilt. Desjardins said on page 206 that appealing to your pre-existing and considered desires is an ethical marketing practice. So you see the slogans: burdened by debt, financial challenges, retiring on empty, struggling elders, overwhelming prescription costs, reverse mortgages, overwhelming tax debt. Um, it's just terrible how they market, and there's so many people that are vulnerable. So, for example, you know that gut-wrenching pain and sadness that you feel when the ASPCA commercial comes on and Sarah McLachlan is singing her song "In the Arms of an Angel," and you either donate even when you don't have the money to give out of guilt, or you feel like a dirty dog when you change the channel. It is, in my opinion, it's unethical, but it's a good cause and it's very effective. So you can't really argue on it works, but it does. They do use that commercial to manipulate people into giving money. Not that I haven't given money, but it is a good cause and they can get away with it. So I picked out a case study. The FTC was suing a publisher for targeting seniors with phony diabetes cure and money-making schemes. This was in October of 2019. So I found an article on consumerlab.com. So on October 24th of 2019, FTC filed a lawsuit against the publisher of books, newsletters, other publications aimed at seniors that falsely promised to cure type 2 diabetes. So basically, they were this company and their affiliates, they were making billions of dollars a year defrauding the elderly out of their money. So the book they're talking about, The Doctor's Guide to Reversing Diabetes in 28 Days, it was promoted to older consumers and promised a 100% success rate. So they sent out marketing materials about the protocol or regimen, it claimed that the hidden cause to diabetes was exposure to non-iodide, I can't say that word. I could say it earlier. Radiation from the electronic devices and computers, cell phones, stuff like that, they said it caused the disease, which wasn't true. So, like I said, the FTC filed the lawsuit against Agora Financial for targeting the elderly, selling these books for this phony cure for $249 each. And they stated to the elderly that it was sold at a $750 discount. So they were also charged for sending out. There was a newsletter called Lifetime Income Report and a book called Congress's Secret $1.17 trillion giveaway. It promised that they were entitled to hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in congressional checks or Republican checks. So I dug a little deeper into this company, and they also sent out solicitations to the elderly about cancer cures and a bunch of other things. But basically, they were, and it sounded like they were still defrauding a lot of people. So I'm hoping that the FTC will nail them. So I have questions for you. The unethical practice of marketing and advertising to vulnerable people is one of the topics we read about in Chapter 9. Do you believe that all of the elderly don't have the capacity for consent? Or do you think they are just as a whole, a protected class? Why or why not? The next one is, if it were a middle-aged person that was defrauded, that had a gambling addiction, what reasons would you give to decide if that person was truly gave informed consent? The third question is, if your elderly relative gave your information away to a stranger and later your house was robbed, could you hold that relative liable for giving away your information? I'm just asking for a friend. You know how that is. Well, thank you for watching. I appreciate y'all. Y'all are good classmates. And I appreciate y'all very much. And for some reason, my last slides are showing invisible. So thank you very much.